Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Kier, and today I'm going to be doing a solo episode previewing the Steelers and Colts third week of the preseason. That game starts at 4:30, and we are broadcasting today on game day. It's been a rough week for the both of us. We were not able to get together to get a preview episode like we normally do, so unfortunately it's just going to be me today, but I'm going to try to throw in some things that Austin wanted to mention. But before we get started, just an example of one of our nice fans out there that listens and does comment on our postings. Wanted to give a shout out to Steel1974 on our YouTube page. He commented below on our last episode talking about the what ifs of the 2015 playoffs for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that being the Antonio Brown injury he suffered in the Bengals game, causing him to miss the divisional game against the Broncos, which the Steelers eventually lost. The critical moment in that game being a fumble by Fitzgerald Toussaint, and the Steelers were unable to stop Peyton Manning and the Broncos offense from scoring the go-ahead touchdown. He was talking about how he didn't believe it really would have made a difference if Antonio Brown played. And I was talking a little bit more about how that may or may not have been true, but I think that the Steelers don't even get to that game if Antonio Brown doesn't get injured in the Bengals wildcard game. You think about it, the Vontaze Burfict's hit on Antonio Brown was a 15-yard penalty that put the Steelers at, well, it was something like a 50-yard field goal at that point. That would have been tough, so there's no guarantee he even makes it from that point. And then that is the point when there's an extra personal foul, or I believe it was unsportsmanlike conduct penalty against the Bengals that moved it an extra 15 yards. So 30 yards on that one play. I don't see, if that's just a regular incomplete pass, the Steelers have no timeouts with something like maybe 30 seconds left. I don't remember exactly. It's possible that they move on, but I think that their chances of winning that game are a lot less likely if you think about how Antonio Brown does not get injured there. You think of the situation. I don't think it's likely. So I think Steele 1974 and I both agree. As far as that goes, we just thought differently as how we were to get there. But I don't think it really would have made that much of a difference if Brown played or not, because I don't think the Steelers would have won if he ended up playing that game. So that's just something I wanted to talk a little bit about. It's nice to have someone that actually, comments and talks a little bit about the things that we talk about on our show. So it's nice to engage with the fans of this show every now and then. So we wanted to highlight that. So it's Steel1974 on YouTube. Just wanted to throw that out there, give him a little shout out. Thank you for taking the time to comment on our post and going back and forth with us a little bit. So thank you for that. So now we can move on into some big NFL news, specifically yesterday with two injuries to players on AFC contending teams. First and foremost, it's Julian Edelman of the New England Patriots. They fear that he has a torn ACL. He's getting it screened today. I believe he's getting an MRI today. How much would this loss affect the Patriots? This is interesting because generally the Patriots, I feel like this would be something that might affect them a lot early, not so much later. The Patriots always have that next man up mentality. And behind him, they have Chris Hogan, who the Steelers remember very well from the AFC Championship game. And, of course, they have Rob Gronkowski. So as far as what the Patriots are losing, I think they're going to be able to make it up quite a bit with the guys that they have. But there is something to be said for that security blanket that Edelman provides. He's kind of like the new Wes Welker, if you think of it. But I'd even venture to argue more athletic than Wes Welker ever was. He's certainly a talented football player, and losing him is going to suck. But if the Steelers still played the Patriots today, we already know that it's not really going to matter, because in that AFC Championship game, they didn't have Gronkowski, who in my opinion would be a bigger loss than Edelman. So basically the Steelers, I don't want to make this a thing about color, but I mean, for real, cover the white guy. I mean, how many times have Gronkowski, Edelman, and Hogan now burned the Steelers over the past 6-7 years? They really need to get better when it comes to covering those guys. And there's one of them is down, but there's still two other guys that are very effective players in their own right. And I'm still not comfortable at all thinking that the Steelers can beat them in this situation. So they definitely need they're still going to need help if they're going to want to beat the Patriots. Losing Julian Edelman is certainly not a crushing blow for the Patriots. It might not even cost them a win. Let's put it that way. It certainly sucks for Brady, but that team is talented and well coached enough that it's not going to matter in the end. So the other injury is that of Spencer Ware. I don't know much about the injury here, but I know that Spencer Ware, the Chiefs' starting running back, was carted off with an injury, and that's interesting because this is the first year they don't have Jamal Charles, and Niall Davis, their former backup, is now on the Steelers. So it is interesting. We'll have to keep in tune with that as far as what's going on, because that would be a big loss for the Kansas City offense. He being one of the better players on that offense from a year ago. So that might be quite a big loss for an AFC contending team. Good news for the Steelers in that respect. But you hope he makes a quick and speedy recovery. And then something interesting that Austin created that he wanted us to talk about was just an interesting scenario. Just imagine you have the best fantasy wide receiver group of all time. Say for whatever reason you're able to have Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., and Antonio Brown on your fantasy team. The question is, what do? You have to start one, bench one, and trade one away. So this group of receivers is generally considered by the league to be the best in football. So I guess just say you're in a standard league, which one do you start, bench, and trade? And Austin and I both had the same list here. We decided we were both going to start Antonio Brown. Then we decided to bench Odell Beckham Jr. and trade away Julio Jones. Interesting, if you look at Julio Jones's numbers, they're not like big fantasy numbers. They've always had other options on that team, and I feel like that's something you might want to stay away from. Odell Beckham he's been putting up numbers similar to Antonio Brown the last couple of years, and he's someone I definitely would think is worthy of that top echelon with receivers. Not that Julio isn't, but OBJ definitely has the numbers to back him up. But being someone that covers the Steelers and has been a fan of them since I was a kid, I definitely have bias, but I think Brown is the one that you start here, and Austin felt the same way. He's produced so much, and he looks so good when he gets the ball in his hands. So that's why I went with him. So moving on to some Steelers news, Keon Adams, as the Steelers' 7th round draft pick from this past year, has been placed on injured reserve, more than likely ending his chances of making the roster this year. This is a guy that Austin really liked at the beginning of the year when he was drafted, and he really thought that Arthur Moats was in danger of losing his job to him, but unfortunately Adams just never got on the field, and Austin had high hope for him, and so did I, but better luck next year. Hopefully he'll get a shot at making the team, and it looks like now the outside linebacker position is pretty much set for what it's going to be the whole year. You have your starters in TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, and they'll be backed up by Arthur Moats and James Harrison, and then your special teams guy is going to be Anthony Chickillo. Moving on, the Steelers game today, a lot of guys are expected to make their debut, including Cameron Sutton, Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Ryan Shazier is expected to come back from injury, center Marquise Pouncey, and I don't believe Mike Mitchell is going to play. I believe he and Le'Veon Bell Le'Veon Bell is definitely not going to be playing, but Mike Mitchell I don't believe is going to be playing either. So this is the notorious big preseason game where everyone actually plays for a little bit. Last year, this game came against the Saints, and just about everything that could have gone right in that game did go right. Bell, Brown, and Ben were fantastic. The Steelers' offense looked really good, and I suspect we're going to see something similar again this week, and I'm excited to see guys like Cameron Sutton play because we haven't seen him at all thus far, so it will be interesting to see how the Steelers' offense meshes without Le'Veon Bell. Instead, it'll be likely James Conner starting at running back. We'll get into that more in a little bit, but other news we wanted to get to, the Steelers traded center Lucas Crowley for cornerback Deshaun Phillips of the Redskins, and Austin looked into this a little bit. And he mentioned that it was kind of interesting that this is now the third year in a row that the Steelers have made a trade for a cornerback in the preseason. So in 2015, it was Brandon Boykin. 2016, it was Justin Gilbert. And now you have Phillips this year. But when Austin talked about it, it really made sense in his eyes because the Steelers traded away essentially their third or fourth center. So this guy's not making the team anyways. So why even keep him? The Steelers gave him up, and they got someone who could be a special teams guy. In fact, he was a solid special teams guy for the Redskins last year and started a couple games. And especially with the cornerback position seeming to be in such flux right now with Ross Cockrell and Cody Sensabaugh fighting for a starting job, and the injury to Sutton and Senquez Golson. This seems like a good idea. At the very least, it gives the Steelers another option with all the injuries going on. So moving on, we can finally get to the game now. The most exciting thing, what's the thing that we are most looking forward to? I would have to imagine, as I said earlier, it's seeing the Steelers' offense in full, minus Le'Veon Bell, of course. We're expecting to see the full offensive line, the receiving complement, and Ben Roethlisberger, and even Landry Jones play. So this will be interesting because we've seen Josh Dobbs and Bart Houston, a whole lot of our number 3 and number 4 quarterbacks so far. There's no reason to suspect we should see anything too different. The Steelers offense has talked all offseason and preseason about how they want to be better as far as ball control, but it's been interesting to note that maybe their biggest weakness last year wasn't in ball control, where I think they were in the top half of the league in turnovers, but rather they had more of an issue scoring when they got to the red zone. So that's something to look out for too. How much they turn the ball over and red zone scoring. So I'm very curious to see that. And I'm also, as always, you're interested to see how they perform on third down. The Colts are a team that the Steelers have torched over the last 3 years, and I would expect more of the same, even though it is the preseason, especially since the starters are going to be playing more. So, what Steelers are going to be thriving against the Colts? Austin and I compiled a little list that we wanted to get to. So, namely, we're going to go with on defense T.J. Watt and L.T. Walton. Now, the Colts have a pretty weak offensive line, so that's the reason for that. And then if you really want to go beyond that, the Steelers defense is not facing Andrew Luck. It's going to be Scott Tolzien more than likely back there. And we saw him on that fateful Thanksgiving last year, and he did not look good at all. He led the Colts down the field a few times, but they only managed one touchdown. So really, you'd have to think the Steelers defense would be licking their chops seeing that. And then on offense, it's pretty simple. It's got to be Ben Roethlisberger. You see his last 3 games against them. Let's see. He's thrown 12 touchdowns to 0 interceptions in his last 3 games. 2014, he had that memorable 6-touchdown performance. Oh, no, I think it's 13 touchdowns. In any case, in 2014, he threw for 522 yards, 6 touchdowns, and then, he followed that up in 2014 with, a measly 400-something yards and 4 touchdowns. And then last year, he took his foot off the pedal by only throwing for 220-something yards and 3 touchdowns with no picks. So, yeah, I'm really expecting Roethlisberger to have quite an easy day against the Colts. I suspect he'll only play no more than the first half. I think it's probably honestly going to be no more than the first quarter. I don't think there's any need for them to play long. You saw the Patriots were moving the ball and scoring pretty much at will against the Detroit Lions last night. And, Edelman got injured, but I think you only needed to see them for a quarter. They were in control of that game early on. And then as far as Steelers that are going to have a tough time, I think I'm actually going to go different. For Austin went with Sammy Coates, and I see why he thinks that. Coates and Hunter, this is a big week for both of them. This is definitely the week where we're going to figure out more than likely who's going to get cut and who's going to stay. I could see Sammy Coates because he really hasn't done much in this preseason, and he hasn't been throwing the ball a lot, so I suspect we're going to see him get a lot of targets, and, he hasn't really proven that he can consistently be relied upon in the passing game, even when he was producing early on last year. This is probably one of his last chances to show he can do something. On the other side, I'm going to go with Justin Hunter. well, this could be a game that he really breaks out. At the same point, he's had so many chances to do so, and he's it's the same story as his whole career. He's had the talent, but he's never been able to put it together. And I think we're going to see that in full display in this game. And for that reason, I think he's going to struggle to really make a big impact, and he's just not going to make the plays that he should. So now, moving on, a lot of people were making a big deal at the beginning of the preseason if Josh Dobbs was going to push Landry Jones for the number 2 quarterback position. And honestly, I think the last 2 weeks we've seen that Josh Dobbs, it really is kind of a project quarterback, maybe at best a low-level starter when all is said and done in his career. Landry Jones, look, we're not big fans of him. I don't think that's any secret, but the fact of the matter is he knows this offense very well, and I think he knows how to throw from the pocket. He knows his receivers well, and he is a seasoned NFL veteran now. This is his 5th year in the NFL. He's been around. He knows how to play, and we saw that he can play well in games against the Browns. Maybe not put together a full good game, but he can play well when needed to in spots, and that's something that Josh Dobbs has not shown yet. So I think Dobbs' poor performance in the first 2 games easily cemented Landry Jones as the number 2 quarterback. As far as we're going to be taking our guess for the rookie who's going to have the best game of the week and the player of the week. So Austin went with Brian Allen, the cornerback, 5th round pick, and for player of the week he went with Mike Hilton. So a pair of cornerbacks, which I could definitely see against someone like Scott Tolzien in the Colts' not-so-good offense. Now, let's be honest. If Mike Hilton is a good guess for player of the week, in my opinion, that's a guy who's been making plays every week so far, and he's been making plays back in training camp. So that's definitely a good decision to make. Brian Allen's an interesting one. I'm glad Austin went there, though, because he hasn't shown much, and he hasn't had much of an opportunity, but we know this is a guy with raw athletic skills. I could see this being a game where he gets a chance to make a couple interesting defensive plays. So definitely keep your eye on Brian Allen. I got kind of lazy here, but I really just think James Conner is going to get the ball 25 times. That's what I see. He's going to be starting this game and probably playing into the third quarter, I suspect. The Steelers know what they're getting in Fitzgerald, Toussaint, and Niall Davis. They probably still want to figure out more of what they have in James Conner. So I suspect he's going to get the ball early and often. Like I said, 25 touches. I think he scores at least 1 touchdown, probably a couple. They definitely want to get him a touchdown for that home preseason game. Let him celebrate with the fans. So I think he'll be the player of the game. Moving on to our bold predictions, Austin had 3. 1, Fitzgerald Toussaint absolutely destroys in this game, getting 90 yards on less than 15 carries, and he actually gets 2 kickoffs past the 25-yard line. That is bold indeed, Austin. I don't know if Fitzgerald Toussaint is going to be getting many carries. I mean, there is reason to assume that he'll get a decent amount with Niall Davis, since this is the last real week we'll get a good look at those guys. I mean, next week we'll be seeing all backups, so it's not that you shouldn't read too much into it at that point. He adds that Mike Hilton's going to get an interception and another sack. I definitely could see that happening. As I said already, Hilton's been all over the field so far. And then he also said the Colts are kept under 205 yards of total offense. That's a bold prediction. I just think that it's tough for a team to get that little offense when it's so unorganized at the end of the game with all the backups in. I think there's someone's going to blow a coverage or something. So I think that's a bit of a bold prediction, but I think I see where he's going with it too. Mine is that the Steelers intercept Scott Tolzien 2 times and sack him 3 times in limited action. That might not be a huge bold prediction now that I think about it, but hey, considering that's pretty much exactly what they did. In fact, that's exactly what they did in the Thanksgiving game last year, so maybe that's not a bold prediction at all. My second one is that James Conner goes over 100 yards and scores 2 TDs. And my last one is that Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown connect 7 times in 1 quarter of action for 1 touchdown. And like I said, I think those guys are only going to play 1 quarter. I don't really think, unless if they only have like 1 or 2 drives in the first quarter, I suspect they won't get much time. There's no real need to see them beyond the first quarter, I think, but we will see. And then final score predictions. Austin and I both had the Steelers winning. Austin had the Steelers winning 30-14, and I had the Steelers winning 28-20. The fact of the matter is the Steelers just seem to always beat the Colts, and I feel like the starters are going to give the Steelers enough cushion to win their third preseason game in a row and start the preseason 3-0. I don't remember the last time that's ever happened for the Steelers, but don't read too much into winning preseason games either. But this is the game. If you're going to watch a preseason game, this is the week to watch. Steeler Nation, if you want to see the starters play, this is the time to see them play. Watch that first half because that's when we're going to see guys that haven't played in the preseason yet. This is when they're going to play. So make sure you stay tuned this week, starting at 4:30 for the game. So if you have any questions about the show, we're going to wrap things up for today. Email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at @stronger_steel, Facebook Stronger Than Steel Podcast, and Instagram Stronger_Steel_NFL. And visit our site strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com for more information. And we post our episodes on SoundCloud and YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. And like always, if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to comment or email us. We like to have a back and forth with our listeners, and we appreciate that you listen and take the time to comment on our posts as well, just like Steel1974 did on YouTube. So just remember that. In Steeler Nation, we apologize that we're going to be having limited coverage as we get our school schedules underway here, Austin and I, and we are adjusting from summer to fall. So please, we apologize for not being able to post as much, and we thank you for your patience. Steeler Nation, enjoy the game today and have a safe weekend.